Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The scariest monsters are the ones that live quietly inside you and pay no rent. Most people spend their lives running from their flaws. Sigma males? They shake hands with theirs and offer them a drink. But here's the twist. Even the most self-aware Sigma male is blind to parts of himself. Not because he's clueless, but because he's comfortable living with his contradictions. He doesn't waste time fixing what doesn't bother him. Here's a fact that'll twist your mind. According to psychological studies on self-awareness, even the smartest people are only aware of about 10 to 15% of their own mental patterns. Translation? Even Sigma males are driving their minds like it's a sports car with a cracked rearview mirror. And guess what? They're fine with that. So today we're diving headfirst into the brutal truths, the unspoken contradictions, and the quietly terrifying realities Sigma males don't fully understand about themselves. But strangely enough, they're at peace with it. This isn't another Sigma male 101 pep talk. No recycled nonsense about lone wolves and mysterious vibes. It's the deep, raw stuff they wouldn't tell you even if they noticed it themselves. So buckle up. You're about to meet the hidden side of the Sigma male mind, the part that smiles at its own flaws and leaves the rest of the world guessing. Number 1. They're not as cold as they seem. They're just done explaining warmth. Sigma males aren't as cold as people think. But here's the brutal truth. They've just reached a point where explaining their warmth feels pointless. They've already tried that in the past. They've opened up, they've shown kindness, they've extended a hand, and every single time it came back burned, bruised, or empty. Somewhere along the way, they realized something painfully simple. The world doesn't reward quiet kindness. It mistakes it for weakness, or worse, an invitation to exploit. So, what did they do? They shut the door, quietly. Not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped advertising it. They keep their warmth locked away now, using it only when it truly matters, maybe for the one friend who never betrayed them, or for the stranger who's falling apart but too proud to ask for help. But for the world at large, cold silence. Not because they enjoy it, but because they've accepted it as the safest route. The irony is some of the kindest actions Sigma males take are never seen, never acknowledged, and definitely never celebrated. They solve problems for people who never knew they had a helping hand behind the scenes. They protect people who would never thank them, and they walk away before anyone can figure out it was them who made the difference. That's the kind of warmth they have, quiet, private, and hidden under layers of calculated detachment. But people don't get that. They just see the cold surface and label it aloof, arrogant, or heartless. What they'll never realize is that Sigma males aren't heartless. They're just done explaining that they have one. They've learned that in a world obsessed with loud displays of affection, subtle warmth is invisible. And they're perfectly okay with being invisible if it means protecting what little peace they have left. So when people call them cold, distant, or unemotional, they don't correct them anymore. They let them believe what they want. Because Sigma males know the truth, their warmth still exists, but not for public consumption. It's there, waiting, hidden beneath the silence, and only those who truly matter will ever get close enough to feel it. Number 2, they know their detachment hurts others. They just see no other way. Sigma males aren't blind to the effect their distance has on others. They know exactly what their silence does to the people who care about them. They see the confusion, they feel the disappointment, and they sense the loneliness they leave behind when they pull away. But in their minds, it's a price that has to be paid. Every time they tried closeness before, it cost them their peace, their focus, or worse, their identity. They've learned through brutal experience that being emotionally available isn't just risky, it's draining. For them, emotional closeness often turns into obligation. People don't just want to know them, they want to fix them, change them, or mold them into something more comfortable. And Sigma males, they refuse to be shaped by anyone else's expectations. So when faced with a choice between hurting someone else's feelings or betraying their own inner peace, they'll choose self-preservation every time. Not because they're selfish, but because they've learned that self-betrayal is a slow death. They've done it before. They've compromised themselves in past relationships, friendships, or even family dynamics, and every time it left them feeling hollow and disconnected from who they really are. That's why they keep their distance. It's not cruelty, it's protection. And in a strange, cold way, they've made peace with the fallout. They know some people will think they're heartless, cold, or emotionally unavailable. They know they'll lose connections they might have actually valued. But what they've learned is that no relationship is worth losing yourself for, and if people truly understood them, they'd realize this distance isn't rejection, it's survival. Sigma males are wired to protect their peace above all else. Sometimes that means being alone when they don't want to be. Sometimes it means hurting people they wish they could hold close. But for them, this is the only way to stay whole. It's a cold truth, but a real one. Some bridges aren't burned out of hatred. They're burned because crossing them means losing yourself on the other side. Number 3. They hide their own vulnerabilities so well, they forget they exist. Sigma males have spent so much time covering up their vulnerabilities that they've practically erased them from their conscious minds. It wasn't a game for them, it was survival. Every weakness they showed in the past got twisted, used against them, or became a crack someone tried to pry open. So they built walls, not flimsy ones, but steel-reinforced, bulletproof barriers that even they can't see through sometimes. And here's where it gets brutal. They've hidden those flaws so deep, so far beneath the surface, that they genuinely forget they're there. They operate like machines, calculated, controlled, composed, until life hits them in a way they didn't see coming. A moment of loss, failure, betrayal, or unexpected vulnerability shatters the illusion. And for a brief, painful second, they remember, oh yeah, I'm human. But even then, they don't crumble the way most people would. They take the hit straight on. No excuses, no pity party. They process it internally, quietly, and without asking anyone for help. If it knocks them down, fine. They'll sit in the dirt for a minute, maybe even curse themselves for being blind to it, but then they get up, adjust their armor, and keep going like nothing happened. What's crazy is, most people never even see the hit land. Sigma males are experts at taking damage in silence. You won't see them fall apart publicly, you won't hear them rant on social media or cry to a friend. They suffer in private, rebuild in silence, and walk back into the world like they were never wounded. But make no mistake, the wounds are there. They just don't wear them as a badge of honor. In fact, they hate being seen as broken or struggling. Vulnerability to them isn't weakness, but it is dangerous. So they hide it even from themselves until life forces them to face it. And when it does, they don't flinch for long. Because Sigma males don't let pain define them, they let it teach them. Then they bury it again, deeper this time, where no one, sometimes not even they, can find it. Number 4. They're quietly obsessed with legacy, not popularity. Sigma males couldn't care less about fleeting applause or public recognition. You won't catch them chasing likes, followers, or awards. In fact, they find all of that exhausting, shallow, and temporary. But beneath that quiet detachment, there's a fire that never shuts off, a restless drive to leave something behind that actually matters. Not to please society, but to prove to themselves that their life meant something. They don't want popularity because they know how fragile it is. Today's hero is tomorrow's forgotten name. Trends fade, crowds move on, and people's admiration shifts with the wind. Sigma males see through all of that. They've watched people chase validation only to be forgotten the moment someone flashier comes along. That kind of shallow approval never interested them. What keeps them awake at night is something far more personal and far more haunting. The idea of leaving this world without making a real dent in it. They want to build something lasting. It could be a business, a philosophy, a piece of art, a breakthrough idea, or even just a reputation for living life on their own terms. They don't care if the world knows their name. They care if their actions echo long after they're gone. Legacy for them isn't about ego, it's about meaning. It's about creating something that doesn't vanish when they do. They don't care if it's loud, glamorous, or publicly celebrated. In fact, they'd prefer it to be subtle, powerful, and timeless, something people use without even knowing where it came from. That's why Sigma males work in silence, why they build things in the shadows, avoid public applause, and often disappear from the spotlight before anyone can thank them. They're not avoiding people because they're shy. They're avoiding distraction. Every minute spent chasing validation is a minute stolen from creating their legacy. And if no one ever claps for them, fine. Legacy doesn't need applause to exist. Impact speaks for itself long after the noise dies down. That's the real game Sigma males are playing, and most people will never realize it until it's too late to thank them. Number 5. Their emotional independence is sometimes just emotional starvation. Sigma males wear emotional independence like armor. They pride themselves on not needing anyone, not leaning on anyone, and not depending on anyone to feel whole. To the outside world it looks like strength, and to be fair, sometimes it is. But peel back a few layers and you'll find something far more uncomfortable. What they call independence is sometimes just emotional starvation that they've learned to live with. Somewhere along the line, they stopped expecting emotional nourishment from anyone. Maybe people disappointed them too many times. Maybe the few they trusted used their vulnerability against them. Maybe they just got tired of explaining their complex inner world to people who didn't care to understand. So they adapted. They taught themselves how to survive without emotional closeness. They stopped seeking comfort in others and started finding it in solitude, work, philosophy, or silence. And for a while it worked. But over time, that emotional hunger didn't disappear. It just got buried. What's wild is that many Sigma males wouldn't even describe themselves as lonely. They've gone numb to that feeling. Healthy intimacy? They've forgotten what that even feels like. Vulnerability, foreign language, letting someone close enough to truly know them. Risky and, frankly, exhausting. They know they've built walls too high for most people to climb, but oddly enough, they're okay with that. They've accepted emotional numbness as the price for peace. Where others see emptiness, they see quiet. Where others feel loneliness, they feel freedom. But here's the raw truth they rarely admit, even to themselves. That numbness isn't peace, it's just absence. Absence of pain, yes, but also absence of joy, connection, and shared meaning. And somewhere deep down, buried under all the independence and stoicism, they know that. Yet, they're not rushing to fix it. Because opening those doors again means risking hurt all over. And to them, emotional starvation feels safer than emotional betrayal. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but it's familiar. And sometimes, familiarity is the only comfort they trust. Number 6. They disrupt to protect, not just to rebel. Sigma males don't break systems just for the thrill of rebellion. They're not some chaotic rebels without a cause, throwing stones at authority to feel powerful. That's what people on the outside assume because it's easier to label them as troublemakers than to understand their deeper motives. But the truth is far more layered and far more dangerous. Sigma males destroy what's broken because they know exactly who those broken systems hurt. The powerless, the unseen, the ones who don't have the luxury of walking away. They've spent their lives watching corrupt leaderships, toxic social structures, and manipulative cultures crush the spirits of people who couldn't defend themselves. And while Sigma males have the intelligence and resilience to survive those systems, they know others aren't as lucky. So when they burn something down, it's not just to make a statement, it's to prevent that system from hurting the next person who comes along. Whether it's a toxic workplace, a manipulative relationship dynamic, or a crooked social order, they'd rather tear it apart and face the fallout than let it keep chewing people up. But they rarely explain this motive. Why? Because they don't care to justify themselves. They're not seeking applause for their rebellion. In fact, they often destroy quietly, efficiently, and without sticking around to claim credit. They let people believe what they want, whether it's seeing them as a villain, a disruptor, or a ghost. What most people will never realize is that Sigma males have a deeply protective instinct. They won't fight for the popular causes that win public praise. They'll fight for the invisible ones, the battles no one else notices or cares about. And when the dust clears, they'll be long gone, onto the next quiet war that needs fighting. To them, it's never been about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about removing a cancer before it spreads further. even if people hate them for it, even if they're misunderstood forever, because they're not fighting for recognition. They're fighting to make sure someone weaker doesn't suffer the same way they once did. Number 7. Their freedom is sometimes a self-made prison. Sigma males worship freedom like a religion. They shape their lives around it, protect it with everything they have, and make decisions based on one question. Will this cost me my freedom? And if the answer is yes, they walk away. Whether it's from a relationship, a career, or an entire social circle. On the surface, it looks powerful, but beneath that independence is a quiet, painful irony they rarely talk about. In chasing total freedom, they've sometimes built a cage of their own making. They cut off attachments so they wouldn't be controlled, but in doing so, they also cut off connection. They avoid obligations to protect their peace, but in the process, they miss out on depth, loyalty, and belonging. And they know this. Sigma males aren't blind to the consequences. They're fully aware that their freedom sometimes feels like isolation wearing a crown. But even knowing this, they make the same choice every time. Because to them, the price of freedom, loneliness, distance, emotional coldness, is still better than the suffocation of control. They've tasted what it feels like to be trapped by people's expectations, manipulated by emotional demands, or forced to play roles they never chose. That kind of life felt far worse than solitude ever could. So they accept the emptiness, they embrace the distance, they fill the silence with work, purpose, and thought. And when the loneliness creeps in at night, they remind themselves that it's still their choice, that no one owns them, no one cages them, and no one dictates their next move. It's a harsh trade-off. Freedom in exchange for closeness, autonomy in exchange for belonging. But to the Sigma male, there's no contest. Emotional captivity, no matter how beautiful it looks on the outside, will always be worse than being alone on your own terms. In the end, their so-called freedom is a double-edged sword. It keeps them safe, but it keeps them distant. It gives them peace, but it steals their warmth. And they've made peace with that contradiction, even if it means spending some of life's best moments with no one beside them to share it. Number 8. They don't believe in destiny, only in damage control. Sigma males aren't sitting around waiting for destiny to unfold like some grand cosmic storyline. They don't wake up believing the universe has a purpose mapped out for them. In their eyes, life isn't some beautiful journey toward fulfillment. It's a battlefield full of chaos, unpredictability, and traps waiting to be triggered. And their mindset? Simple. Control the damage, survive the fallout, and move forward. While the world chases purpose and meaning, Sigma males are calculating risks and planning exits. They don't romanticize life. They dissect it. Every relationship, every opportunity, every challenge is filtered through one brutal question. How badly can this go wrong, and how do I contain it when it does? They learned this mindset the hard way. Somewhere in their past, life didn't go according to plan. People they trusted failed them. Dreams they chased turned to dust. And somewhere along the way, the romantic notion of destiny died quietly, replaced by raw, survival-driven logic. Now, they play life like a strategist in a war room, always 2 steps ahead of the next disaster. This doesn't mean they're bitter or joyless. In fact, they can still enjoy moments of peace and success, but they never get too comfortable, because they know that comfort invites complacency, and complacency leads to getting blindsided. So they stay sharp. Always. You won't hear Sigma males talk much about this side of themselves. They don't sit around bragging about how they live in survival mode. It's not a badge of honor, it's just reality. They move through life with quiet precision, dodging the traps others fall into, because they weren't distracted by feel-good ideas like fate and purpose. Fulfillment to them is secondary. If it comes, fine. But survival comes first. Protect your mind, protect your energy, protect your freedom. That's the core operating system. In a world obsessed with finding meaning, Sigma males have already accepted the truth most people avoid. Sometimes, life doesn't give you meaning. Sometimes, it just throws chaos your way, and your job is to survive it without losing yourself in the wreckage. Number 9. They crave connection, but distrust the cost. Sigma males are not as emotionally detached as people think. They crave connection just like anyone else. They want someone who gets them without trying to fix them. Someone they can sit with in silence without feeling pressured to perform or pretend. They want depth, honesty, and loyalty. But here's the harsh reality. They almost never find it without strings attached. In their experience, most connections come with hidden costs. Maybe it's the expectation to constantly explain themselves. Maybe it's the pressure to fit into someone else's version of how they should act, feel, or live. Or maybe it's the silent demand that they sacrifice their freedom to maintain the relationship. And for a Sigma male, that's non-negotiable. They've learned through brutal trial and error that most people can't love without controlling, can't stay close without shaping, can't connect without taking. And Sigma males aren't willing to give up who they are just to feel less alone. They'd rather deal with solitude than lose their identity in someone else's expectations. That's why they walk away. Every time, even when it hurts, even when they don't want to, even when they find themselves craving the very thing they're running from. To them, the pain of loneliness is easier to carry than the weight of emotional debt. What people misunderstand is that this isn't arrogance or cold-heartedness, it's survival. Sigma males know the cost of emotional dependence, and they've decided it's a price they're not willing to pay. Not anymore. They tried. They lost themselves in the process. And once you've tasted that kind of loss, you never let it happen again. So yes, they crave connection, but not if it means constant explaining, emotional sacrifice, or pretending to be someone they're not. And because those kinds of pure, cost-free connections are so rare, they often choose to be alone. It's a painful trade-off, but a conscious one. Walk away lonely but free, or stay connected and slowly lose your soul. Every Sigma male knows which one they'll choose, and even if their heart aches in the silence afterward, at least they still have their freedom intact. Number 10. They can destroy what they love to protect who they are. Sigma males live by a ruthless code. Protect your identity at all costs. No matter how much they love something, whether it's a person, a project, or a lifelong dream, if it starts to threaten who they are at their core, they will walk away. Or worse, they will burn it down. Not out of hatred, but out of brutal necessity. They've learned the hard way that the world has a way of slowly reshaping you when you aren't paying attention. Relationships start with love, but sometimes turn into cages. Careers begin with passion, but can mutate into prisons of obligation. Even friendships built on loyalty can rot into systems of quiet control. And Sigma males, they refuse to be quietly controlled. So when they sense that something they care about is trying to mold them, limit them, or define them in ways they never agreed to, they don't negotiate. They end it, quickly, decisively, and without looking back. To outsiders, it looks cold, heartless even. How could someone destroy something they loved? But Sigma males see it differently. What's the point of having something you love if it kills who you are in the process? This is where their emotional detachment becomes lethal. They know the difference between love and survival, and if forced to choose, survival wins every single time. Not survival in the basic sense, but the survival of their core identity, who they are, what they stand for, and how they move through the world. And they don't do this dramatically. There are no emotional explosions, no public fallouts, just quiet, surgical endings. One day they're there, the next day they're gone. And what they left behind is scorched earth. It hurts them too, though they rarely admit it. They grieve what they destroy, but in their mind that pain is the cost of freedom. They can rebuild projects, they can find new relationships, they can create new dreams. But once you lose yourself, it's game over. That's why Sigma males never hesitate. They know the cold truth most people deny. Sometimes you have to sacrifice what you love to save who you are. Number 11. Their silence is sometimes punishment, not peace. Sigma males are often mistaken for being peacefully detached when they go silent. People think they're just retreating into their quiet world, reflecting or recharging. But that's not always the case. Sometimes their silence isn't calm, it's calculated, and it's meant to sting. When someone crosses a Sigma male's boundaries, betrays their trust, or disrespects their autonomy, they don't waste energy arguing. They don't raise their voice, plead for understanding, or engage in emotional debates. Instead, they vanish, quietly, coldly, and completely. And that disappearance isn't weakness, it's punishment. They know that absence cuts deeper than confrontation. Words can be dismissed, arguments can be spun, but silence? Silence leaves people alone with their guilt, their confusion, and their regret. Sigma males understand this psychological pressure better than most. They know the human mind hates unanswered questions and unresolved endings. So, rather than giving someone closure, they remove themselves and let the silence fill the room like a ghost. The person left behind is forced to replay their actions over and over, wondering what went wrong, why the Sigma left, and if they'll ever return. That's the consequence Sigma males deliver, not for revenge, but for clarity. And they rarely explain it. Explaining would mean giving away power. They prefer to let the message deliver itself in the emptiness they leave behind. It's not childish silent treatment or passive-aggressive games. It's a clear signal. I'm gone because you crossed the line. Reflect on that in my absence. This kind of silence is far more devastating than a heated argument because it forces the other person to confront their own behavior without distraction. There's no back and forth, no deflection, no drama, just the cold vacuum where the Sigma male used to be. The cruel part, they know it works. They've used this silence before, and they've seen the impact it leaves. But they don't use it casually. For a Sigma male to go this far, the damage done to them has already crossed a threshold where words are useless. In their world, silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the loudest punishment you'll ever hear. Number 12. They're never fully at rest, even when alone. People love to romanticize the Sigma male's solitude as if it's some endless source of peace and calm. But here's the truth most people miss. Their solitude isn't restful, it's functional. They don't retreat from the world to relax. They retreat so they can think straight. Because when they're surrounded by people, noise, and obligations, their mind feels cluttered, overstimulated, and scattered. But even when they're alone, the engine inside doesn't stop running. There's always another problem to solve, another scenario to analyze, another weakness to fortify. Their mind never shuts up. It's constantly scanning for vulnerabilities, in themselves, in others, and in the systems around them. Solitude just gives them enough quiet to hear their own thoughts without interference. It lets them process things deeply, untangle emotional knots, and strategize their next moves. But it doesn't give them peace in the traditional sense. The restlessness stays like background static they've learned to live with. Even in their most isolated moments, they're thinking about unfinished goals, potential threats, unanswered questions, and unexplored possibilities. Their solitude is like a war room, not a spa retreat. Quiet, yes, but calm, rarely. And the wild part is, they've accepted this. They don't chase stillness because they know it's not how they're wired. Their minds are built for motion, for calculation, for constant refinement. And even though it's exhausting, it's also what makes them who they are. To others, it looks like they're resting when they disappear. But really, they're recalibrating, laying low, running mental simulations of what's next. They're not escaping life. They're preparing for it. The truth is, Sigma males may never truly feel at rest, the way most people define it. But they've made peace with that reality. Their mind is a tool they can't switch off, only sharpen. And in their world, constant awareness beats false peace every time. So while the world thinks they're finally relaxed when they're alone, the Sigma male is quietly building his next move, restless, alert, and ready. And there you have it, the side of Sigma males no one talks about. The quiet contradictions, the hidden struggles, and the brutal truths they carry in silence. They aren't perfect, they aren't superhuman, and they sure as hell aren't immune to pain. But what sets them apart is this. They've made peace with their flaws instead of running from them. They walk through life knowing they'll be misunderstood. They carry loneliness like armor and treat emotional starvation like background noise. They destroy what they love to protect who they are. And when the world demands explanations, they offer silence instead. But beneath all that distance and detachment is something most people will never see. A relentless mind searching for meaning, a quiet protector dismantling broken systems, and a soul that craves connection. but refuses to pay for it with its freedom. Sigma males don't chase applause. They chase impact. They don't seek popularity. They build legacy. And while the world spins in circles trying to understand them, they've already moved on, silently rewriting the rules of their own existence. So the next time you meet a Sigma male and think you've figured him out, think again. What you see is only the surface. The real story is unfolding in places you'll never reach, and he's perfectly fine with leaving it that way. If this hit you differently, if it made you rethink what you thought you knew about Sigma males, don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that's not afraid to dive deep into the raw, uncomfortable truths most people avoid. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Agree, disagree, or add your own perspective. I want to hear from the sharp thinkers, not just the bystanders. And if you know someone who's stuck labeling people with cliches and shallow definitions, share this video with them. Rip the blindfold off their comfort zone. Oh, and don't forget to like this video. Not because it feeds my ego, but because it tells the algorithm that content like this, raw, real, and brutally honest, deserves to reach people who are tired of surface-level noise. Subscribe, like, comment, share, not for vanity, but for clarity. See you in the next one.